Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. Seth Wilson and Thomas Vick here. Looking forward to another episode to talk about how we can help lawyers launch. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. And we were just chatting, as we're getting ready for this recording. Just such an exciting time to be an attorney and using the tools that we've been given in this day and age. And it's just, as we're kind of bouncing ideas off of each other and thinking about the possibilities of the future, just really, if you're considering starting a law firm or maybe you've just started and you're losing a little bit of that motivation. Boy, what an exciting time. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of dedication and a lot of sort of stressors that are going to come along the way. But the future is very bright, I think, for the practice of law, especially for the solo and small firm lawyer.
I have to agree wholeheartedly with you. I'm almost giddy with some of the advancements that are coming with my law practice and some of the AI tools that are available now. That's kind of what we were talking about before the podcast started, and it just has a lot of opportunity available for attorneys, particularly those that are solo and small firm attorneys who have to wear a lot of hats. They're not necessarily specialized in one practice area or just one particular role. They've got to do a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And I think with some of the advancements in technology, we're going to be able to make the attorney's job a lot easier in the future. And I think you were reading an article from the Indiana Lawyer that kind of talked about maybe the advantages in certain sizes of firms as opposed to a large scale firm, and thought you might introduce that article for us.
Yeah, it's interesting because I came across this article after several client meetings with businesses and just general discussions in the marketplace about how the impact of sort of private equity and buyouts and conglomerations and all the things that are happening in the marketplace in terms of economies of scale are tilting the scale, I think, in favor of profit over people. And as you see that happen, people become dissatisfied with these larger organizations that are basically bringing an iPad in and trying to sell you every service that they have to them to maximize the profit for their shareholders or for the IPO that's coming up or something like that. And so I've just noticed that sentiment in my practice and my day-to-day world, if you will, just kind of thinking through when you go to hire a contractor or what have you. And so when I saw this article by Steve Runyon, who is the managing partner of Kroger, Gardis and Regis, a firm in Indianapolis, Indiana, the article title is Growth Mindset Misses Benefits of Close-Knit Mid-sized Firms. And the article itself is worth a read. It's not super long, but it sort of focuses on the value proposition that exists for a firm that's not focused on growing numerically necessarily, but staying durable for the benefit of their clients, and highlight some of the things that we can talk about here in a few minutes. But really just that approach of, as you're thinking about the purpose of your law firm and what you're going to do with it and the clients that you're going to serve, you do need to think about your long-term approach to that. What's the ultimate goal? Are you wanting to become the next large firm and AmLaw 100 or what have you? Or are you trying to serve a need in the marketplace? Because we read all the time about the impending attorney shortage, especially in rural areas. And how can we close that gap and make sure that the provision of legal services is available to those who need it?
Yeah, and one thing that struck me about that article, I just briefly perused it, but maintaining the culture of the firm was one of the points that was advantageous to a mid-size law firm. A big law firm, I've never worked in big law, but a big law firm is going to have a much different culture than a mid-size or even a solo or small firm context. I think that's what's special about having a solo or small law firm. You can really put your finger on what the culture is, and people they really feel like they're your neighbors rather than, you're just, a service provider that they go to your clients get to know you, they get to know the people in your firm. All of that is part of the lifestyle, the culture of the law firm. And I think that's an advantage that you have as opposed to a big law firm.
For sure. As you think about the relationship with that client long term, when you walk through an experience, whatever that engagement process was with that client, you may have worked through some challenging conversations. You've built trust. You've stretched the bounds of the relationship to understand, okay, I'm okay operating within these parameters. And that's not going to scare away the client. That's not going to scare away the attorney. This is going to work. Okay, I know who to call if I have a problem. And I'm comfortable telling somebody else that I had a good experience with Thomas Vick or Seth or what have you. And so I think that's such a value to engage in that, especially if the practice is going to be based in a community. And we all live and work in communities a lot of times. That may not be your goal as a lawyer. You may want to practice out of your home or on the beach somewhere and have a different type of practice. But a lot of solo and small firm lawyers have started their firm in the community where they live and go to work and do all their activities with their family. And so having that built as that foundational piece, and then understanding that that personal connection is going to be so vital to the long-term growth and or sustainability, not growth necessarily, but sustainability of that firm is going to be so important. I thought one of the points in the article was really good, that as the firm does grow and you bring on additional attorneys or staff, you have the opportunity to introduce those individuals to the clients and help the clients become familiar. And if you've built the culture of your firm correctly, that people are wanting to stay there a long time, that also builds an additional level of respect for the firm and relational capital that helps the client feel at ease. And so that's such a big benefit that as time goes on and as I age older, I look at things a little bit differently and go, boy, I'm going to need somebody younger at some point to help handle a lot of these issues that are coming up. One, because my schedule is going to be there, but two, because I may not be able to maintain the same pace that I've maintained my entire career. And so want to make sure that ultimately we have the tools and the people necessary to help provide that service to the client, and having the client watch the development and growth in those individuals that you've sort of put your seal of approval on by hiring them is really powerful.
Yeah, I think the fact that in a small law firm context, your clients are able to know who everybody is. You know, this is the person that answers the phone. This is the paralegal that works on this type of matter. This is the attorney that handles this kind of situation. And as clients get to know you, they begin to feel comfortable with that. And, you know, I think this may be a word of wisdom. Perhaps when you have a solo or small firm, my experience has been people don't like to go downtown. They like to go down the street. It's kind of a point of pride that, you know, a lot of my clients say, oh, I live in the neighborhood just over there. No, you're right around the corner from me. And you feel like you're part of the community. And so just being able to be there for the client and have that relationship with the client and with those that are associated with your firm it's just really, really nice. And we led off the podcast talking about some of the advancements in technology that make it exciting to be an attorney. What are some advancements in technology, Seth, that you have noticed that can allow for that relationship with the client to just continue to blossom?
It's a great question, Thomas. And I think it just underscores the importance of the right tool for the job, because what's the purpose of whatever the technology tool is? If it's meant to allow you as the attorney more freedom to interact with the client directly and answer questions and make sure that that client feels well cared for, then I think it's a good technology tool. And so one of the things I think that's been really helpful that we've used a lot in our office this year are the Plod AI recorders. And so I will come into a meeting with that recorder that does AI based transcription in the back end on the recording, obviously get that consent or make sure you're using discretion of when to use that, or if not, depending on the client situation and the confidentiality concerns that may be there. So we could talk about all that, I suppose, at a different time. But hopefully, our audience is aware of that data security and client confidentiality, all that fun stuff, right? But that tool enables you to pay more attention to the body language, to the physical realities of the space that you're in. What was the comment that made the client shut down? What was the comment that lit the client up and got them excited about the possibility of whatever was happening? What was something that you said that caused them to look confused? You can see all those things if you're not head down taking notes because you don't want to forget it, because you don't want to have to call them later. It slows down, I think, and increases the quality of that first client console. And that's one big tool that has been helpful and has that AI component on the back end that takes all that information and sorts it, puts it together into a meaningful summary that you can go, wow, that really did a good job of encapsulating what it was that we were talking about.
Yeah, you got me on the Claude bandwagon a few weeks ago, and I can't imagine not using it at this point. So, I'll get consent from the client and ask, can I use this recording device? And then I've never had anybody say no. And so we use that. And then I like to use it with estate planning clients because, I talk about, okay, you got this asset, you got this house, you've got this rental property, you've got these IRAs, you've got this brokerage account, you got these checking accounts. It's so important from an estate planning context that the client knows what to do with each particular asset so that their trust is funded. So I go through all of their assets and I'm recording this. So I'm not just talking generally about bank accounts. I'm saying like the bank account at Chase Bank and the brokerage account at Charles Schwab. And then that produces a summary at the end. And, it's a summary of everything that happened in the meeting. But what I've started to do is I take that summary and I will say, convert this into a one-page checklist for the client for funding their trust. And I usually do that through, Office 365 or some other AI program. And it comes up with, just line items of what needs to happen, and maybe even produces a box that they can check off, and maybe even will give them a deadline as to when it needs to be done, and maybe an order of operations. I'll tell you what, I have that conversation with the client, and then that conversation happens before everything is signed. And then at the signing appointment, I've got that checklist and I'm able to say, okay, we talked about all of this. This is what actually you need to do. And you can put that into different contexts. I mean, you could say, any kind of meeting, if it's litigation, family law, child custody, discovery, things that have to happen. If you can just tell the client verbally and then it can spit out a summary, that's going to save you the headache of, having to go back in an email and summarize what you already said. I think, 6 to 8 months ago on our podcast, I was saying that's what I do. I was saying, I have a conversation and then I will take my notes and then I'll dictate, and then I'll have AI spit out an email that summarizes everything that needs to happen. But now it's already, I've skipped a step or two, and it has just been amazing. The thing is, clients forget what I say all the time, particularly when it comes to funding a trust. And if you can have that checklist that summarizes the conversation, it's going to help your clients be better informed and take your advice better going forward.
Yeah. Again, I think the tool that you're utilizing helps support the provision of the service that you're providing. And it gets out of the way of the things that I'm not really good at, which are taking those notes and going, oh, well, I need to remember to summarize this. And Well, but then the phone rings and I got interrupted, or I got a text message, or I got another email, or a client walked in and there's an issue that we need to address. And then I don't have that time right after the meeting to review, make sure that I've done my homework. I gave the client homework. And so it just helps kind of be your second brain in a sense. And I think that's the other aspect of these tools, is not to replace the people that are working with us in our teams or on our teams, but how do we provide additional support for them to be able to help us? And so a project that would take 3 or 4 hours for someone to do, the AI tools can now reduce that to a matter of minutes, where I may be able to throw a large contract or PDF file or group of files and get the AI to give me a high level summary with citations to where it found that, so I can go verify that that's actually there in the contract or whatever. But it's just such a helpful way of providing me with a quick review that I might have somebody else do. Now I've interrupted their workflow. It's going to take a day and a half to get it because it's a 3 hour project, and I've got it in a matter of minutes. And so I think those tools are really beneficial to lawyers starting out. And I think there's going to be a challenge, or maybe even a pendulum swing of, boy, we used to have to review everything in person. Now we don't review anything in person. The AI reviews it first. And I'm not sure where, the line is going to draw on that in terms of operationally, remembering that ultimately the lawyer's responsible for reviewing and making sure that it goes out correctly and is compliant. But at the end of the day, the provision of that, now you see the writing on the wall of, boy, we're not even really going to get anything that's not touched by AI. Clients are coming with AI summaries. Maybe this is the first time they've met with a lawyer, so they ask ChatGPT, what question should I ask the lawyer about this kind of problem? They're generating contracts and bringing those contracts for you to review as the lawyer. And you'll go through and go, boy, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And you go,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to change a bunch of stuff here, but maybe here's some things that you didn't think about given the facts that you're telling me. And so working with the clients and their use of AI in an intelligent way, in a ethical way, in an appropriate way, that's going to be the challenge for the lawyer. But ultimately, it's going to come back to that provision of client service.
Yeah. One thing that I've been thinking about with AI is just I'm glad I'm where I'm at in my law practice experience. I'm 11 years into law practice. It'll be 12 here in October. So I've got a lot of, a decent amount. I wouldn't necessarily say a lot. You work with somebody that has been doing this for 50 years. But 10 years of law practice is a pretty decent, amount of time to understand how the practice of law works and how I like to practice law. And so that's kind of my foundation. My staff has practiced law without AI. My associate attorney and then my paralegals, they've had a period of time where they haven't been reliant on AI to do the work. And I think that may be one of the things to keep an eye out for in the future, is that as the legal field becomes younger and younger, you're going to have people that have never had experience working without AI. And so there may be some assumptions that they're making about AI that are correct, that may not be correct. This is the procedure that has to happen. And they may not know the why behind it. And so that's something to keep an eye out for, and make sure that you understand what the AI is doing, but also that your staff understands what the AI is doing and what it is expected to accomplish.
Yeah, and the analogy I think of when I think of that is, you may not be an accountant or a bookkeeper or a financial guru, but you do need to understand the basics of finances for your office, for your personal life. And you may have to hire someone as the expert to handle some of those things for you. But if you don't have a foundational knowledge base for even how to identify where the questions may need to be asked, that could put you in a world of hurt. And so that's the same thing with AI. If you're just blindly relying on the tool, and if you're a new staff member who has no experience and no training and those kind of things, you may think that, well, this was programmed for me directly. And that's the unique thing about AI is it's not constantly reprogramming itself based on new input and new updates and those kind of things. And so that's going to be a important shift, I think, for us as lawyers is we have to master the tools enough to know where to identify where issues are going to pop up and then train how to prompt your way or chat your way or whatever, whatever the mechanism is going to be to help work through those problems and transition knowledge that way. And so empowering your team with the right tool set and the right training. And hey, if this does this, we want to make sure we're looking at that. That's a red flag we've got to be paying attention to. And so I think you're right. That's going to be an ongoing challenge for us. But again, with the possibilities here, thinking about the stuff that I did early in my career, that had we had an AI tool available would have eliminated so much of the kind of the busy work that was there and gotten us to the heart of the issue. And I think that's what we're always trying to do as lawyers is trying to get to that heart of the issue as efficiently as possible for the client. And sometimes it just takes the time it takes. When I was early in my career, I thought, boy, I'm going to solve this problem. We're going to solve it quick. Nope. It still just took the time it took. And the process worked, but you had to trust the process. And so there's going to be that tension, I think, as we move forward.
Yeah. Some things just take time. You may be able to get to case law research a little bit quicker, but you still got to read the cases. And, you may be able to draft documents better, but you still have to review the documents. And so the responsibility is still there. But again, it's an exciting time for lawyers to practice. And I encourage people to use the tools that we have available. I think you can become a better attorney if you do that.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Thomas, thanks for the discussion today. It's like you mentioned, an exciting time. There's so much possibility there. And I think it's just a great time if you're considering launching your own law firm. And we, again, want to be a resource for that. So where can people find out more about what we've been talking about as lawyers considering launching their own law firms?
Yeah, so go to lifetimelegacylawyers.riverside.com. Go there and check us out. All our podcasts are up there and available. And you can also check us out on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast there. We've got a whole bunch of videos there that are just kind of Seth and me talking about our experience in managing law firms. And I think that people would find those enjoyable and also informative.
Well, we certainly hope so, or we've just fed the AIs a lot of bad information. So I don't know.
There you go.
Well, Thomas, thanks so much. We'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks.